crossing paths together, working hand in hand. Good to see your brother take a stronger stand. Crossing paths together on that day we're sure to stand.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Crossing Paths Television from Hermitage, Pennsylvania, and we sure appreciate you listening to our program today. If you have tuned in for the first time, you're going to hear a story about a man who, just like me, was all over the world, Las Vegas, everything else you can think of, but he met Jesus Christ in prison. Did you know everybody's in prison until you're born again? Think of that. We're going to talk about today. Now, I have my friend here, too, Jack Murphy, and Jack was, I think, was committed the biggest Joel, what is it, the biggest Joel Cipher in the world? What was it that you committed there?
Well, they called it the crime of the century when we stole the J.P. Morgan gem collection out of the American Museum of Natural History in New York City.
And they told you couldn't do it, so you did it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Anyway, welcome to the Crossing Paths. And I know we've been around, you and I, and our testimony, our program is simply the truth. Jesus said in John 8:32, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And you were searching for that all your life, and it cost you many years in prison. Tell me all about it.
I think everybody is searching for some truth. And we go in a lot of different directions, and I did that. I had an incredible childhood and family, and went to over a dozen grammar schools, went to 3 high schools. In fact, I finished high school in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. And I went to the University of Pittsburgh on the first tennis scholarship that they ever gave there. And always looking for something that was real that you could hang your hat on. And I was an overachiever. I learned as a young man because of great grandparents and great teachers and mentors in my life, and whether it was music or whether it was sports, I learned as a young man to listen to people who had been there and done that. And I found out that it's not difficult to succeed. There's a formula for success. It's called hard work and homework and hanging in there. And if you'll do your homework and then put some hard work on it and hang in there with it, it's easy to do just about anything that you ever dreamed of.
Amen.
But I found at the top of that ladder, there was still an emptiness. Whether you had the trophies or you had the bankroll or whatever, as a young man, I left the University of Pittsburgh because I was raised out west in the sunshine of California and all, and that old hawk came rolling down the Ohio River there, and that ice and cold just like to froze me to pieces. And in 1955, I went to Miami Beach. I saw a movie when I was in high school in McKeesport. It was the snow had come and the buses weren't running. And so there was a theater, and I went in the theater and I saw this old gangster movie. These guys in Brooklyn were talking about, we're going to send Ma to Miami because it's warm down in Miami. And they showed Miami with the bikinis and the beaches and the palm trees and the birds and everything. And so I was standing over in Aliquippa. My parents were living there at the time. I was waiting for a train to get back to the university while I was going there. And the snow and the ice was coming down, and that movie ran through my mind. We're sending Ma to Miami because it's warm. I said, that's where I want to go. So I put out my thumb and I went to Miami in 1955. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. It was warm and everything those gangsters were talking about in the movie. And I started working in the resort hotels, and I did a whole bunch of exciting, wonderful things. And I was there when Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack were coming in and the big shows and all. And I was a stuntman in a number of TV and movies. I was a dance instructor in the big hotels. I was a tennis pro, and I worked on the beach and became an acrobatic diver and did a handful of movies as just stuntman and all. But I lived as a young man on a country club in Hollywood, Florida, and I would go to the country club in the afternoon. I was successful in a number of endeavors that I was involved in back in the 50s. And I would sit around and I'd listen to these men who had worked all their lives so that they could come to Florida and sit in the clubhouse and have a cocktail, and all they talked about was balls. tennis balls, golf balls, baseballs, basketballs, and I got to thinking life should be a whole lot more than just balls after you've worked all your life to, and I was always, no matter where I went, I was able to rise up to the top of the ladder there and be successful. But there was just this gnawing situation. I said, there's got to be more to life than just another ball score, another business deal, another vacation.
But you think you would really like their lifestyle, the money? Did you think that was getting into your spirit, right?
Well, I had that, but the same thing in the big clubs, I would see these guys who had all of the success, and they were having problems. They were womanizing. They were drinking. People had problems. It didn't seem like there was anybody that was really free, that they didn't have any real peace. Very seldom would you meet somebody that was just calm and settled and that there was peace in their life. They were running and running. And I moved up to Cape Canaveral, to the Cocoa Beach area. And being raised in California, I spent a lot of time as a lifeguard and a guy on the beach and a surfer. And I started surfing up there, the waves, it was wonderful. It was exciting times. The astronauts were orbiting the Earth, and it was exciting era in America. But I just kept on. I was drinking and doing drugs and having a fun and partying. I'm going back and forth to Cuba on the weekends and just trying to live my dream. But something was missing, and with all of my crowd, it seemed like they were all on the same train. Something was missing. No matter how good life got, no matter how successful, it seemed like there ought to be more to life than that.
Amen.
And I wasn't a real good businessman, and I left the Cocoa Beach area, and I went back to Miami Beach, and I got involved with some buddies of mine, and they had become jewel thieves. And I was one of those guys that I'm ready to do anything. I'd always done a lot of crazy things and dangerous stuff, and I accidentally went out with them one night and made some very serious money on a big robbery that was in the front pages of the paper, and I was easily able to rationalize it. No one got hurt. There wasn't any violence.
Could you expand on that one time? Did you say something about swimming, about something with that? Was that the time you had done that?
I had come back to Miami Beach, and I'm sitting in a bar, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do now? I've just lost a marriage. I've just gotten out of business, and I have a new chapter of life here. And somebody said, listen, we need somebody who can swim real good, and why don't you go with the boat ride with us tomorrow night? I said, sure. Not really understanding, but I was a candidate for anything. So we went out, and three of us, we went in a boat, and we went to this island, one of the islands in Biscayne Bay, that there's bridges over to them and guarded communities there. And they went into this home and came out, and we're in a boat at night, and we're leaving. All of a sudden, you can see cop cars, lights flashing, and next thing we have helicopters in the air, and the next thing, here comes police boats, and it got real busy. So the guy gives me a bag, a zipper bag, and it wasn't very large. And he said, they had told me, now if we have a situation, you're going to have to hit the water, and you're going to have to swim over there to Miami shores, swim up this alley, this boat docks are down here, and swim in there and go to, so I did it. So it got real busy with all the activity going on. I jumped out of the water, swam a couple miles over, went to the docks where they told me, and did what they told me, and that was it. A couple nights later, I was sitting in a bar, and I was wondering, how am I going to pay my beer tab? How am I going to pay my, what am I going to do? I just did it because it was fun. It was a crazy thing. The guy came in and put an envelope in my pocket, and I didn't really think much about it. And I went in the restroom, and while I was in there, I pulled it out, and it was full of money. And it was full of and in those days, this was like the early '60s. I had in there like $15,000. And I said, man, what's this about? He said, look at the newspaper. So I went and found the newspaper in the lobby of the hotel, and there was the headlines there. $350,000 jewel robbery had taken place on this island, and I had carried the jewels to this location and saved the day. And so they threw me a bone. I said, well, I need to check this out. This sounds like something that I'd like to do. And so that began a career that took me all over the country. And just like a golfer wants to play at Pebble Beach and at the big golf courses, and a skier wants to go to Breckenridge and Aspen, when you become a jewel thief, and it's an exciting thing, and you can easily justify it. You know, somebody bought up. I was arrested for robbing Eva Gabor, Zsa Zsa Gabor's sister. Well, I didn't do it. Some buddies of mine did it. But they showed me the ring. And she had a ring that she insured for $25,000. The thing wasn't worth $10,000. But I knew that people insure things for a lot more than they're worth. They get their insurance money. They're happy. You know, and so you can justify doing this kind of stuff. And you don't realize that when you start moving into crime, whether it's a kid starting to smoke dope or it's breaking the law, it's like speeding. You speed a little bit, you'll speed a little bit more. And it's not going to get better. Pretty soon the whistle's going to blow on you. And if you're doing drugs, if you're doing alcohol, nobody starts drinking to be an alcoholic. They just want to have a buzz and be one of the guys. And when you get into the crime thing there, you have no idea that you're stepping into the devil's den right there and where it's going to go. And I have a lot of friends that were in the smuggling business, the big smuggling business, and it just would get worse and worse. You don't know that on that road there are going to be dead people. There's going to be all sorts of pain. You don't know where it's going. You watch the movies and you see all the crazy stuff, the exciting stuff, but they don't show you when you're sitting in that prison cell there and the judge says guilty and you're going to do another 20 years in there. You don't see that your family's going to be embarrassed and lost. Well, anyway, I started in that journey. And you're with a whole bunch of guys with the same attitude, and you get rather brazen and arrogant and belligerent about it. But with me, it became a fascinating journey. And people say, well, crime doesn't pay. It doesn't pay. But let me tell you what, it's exciting. It's exciting stuff. But the end result is just absolutely beyond anything that you ever dreamed of. And I ended up going to New York. I was going up there. We were going after a big diamond ring, and my partners and I. And we got to New York, and we were looking around at a whole lot of other opportunities, but we were doing New York. We're doing the World's Fair. We're going to the New York Yankees. We're playing St. Louis in the World Series. We're going to the nightclubs and all. And one night, we were going home to Miami the next day, and so my partner said, hey, let's go down to the museum and look at that gem collection that's in there. We had seen it a few weeks before. I said, listen, this isn't wise to do this right now. I've got a home rented in Hawaii on the North Shore where the big surf is at. I said, I want to go surfing over there. I said, we've got a home rented in Santa Monica. I've got 2 places in Coral Gables. I mean, we're happening. And anyway, we went down and we stole the J.P. Morgan gem collection.
That was the one that said it's impossible. That's the one that was the biggest robbery of the century?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Right.
Well, let me ask you real quickly, while you were doing all this, how were you living that high life? I mean, you've got $15,000, but were you selling anything on the side, any drugs or anything else? How was you, is that where you got your name, Murph the Surf? Is that where you got the name?
No. I'm in the Surfing Hall of Fame because as a competitive surfer, as a national surfing champion, East Coast champion, Florida champion, and because I was in the surfboard, making surfboards. And years ago, the lifeguards in Miami, during a storm when they made everybody come out of the ocean and the police came and there was a couple of us out riding the waves that were rolling in, and they said, get those guys out of the water. And the lifeguard said, oh, don't worry about them. That's Murph the Surf out there. And that was the nickname that stuck with me. And I used that as in the surfing industry. And so that's where the name came from. But that robbery in Miami, where the guy gave me that money, that was just the beginning. Because then I'd start reading the socialite columns, and people would start telling me things, and the next thing I'd be in Grosse Pointe, I'd be in Beverly Hills. Next thing I'd go to Phoenix or Scottsdale and fight, because you're going after these scores.
The seed was planted, right?
Yeah, and so by the time we got to New York, we were on a roll.
Now, you've never been in prison yet, right?
No, sir.
Now, how did that, first, I know a lot of people, we're not going to get your testimony in a half an hour. We're going to, I talked to my directors here, we're going to maybe continue on next week, so we have, because your testimony is so powerful and everything else. I know they would, when you got out of prison, but let's get back to when you were, real quickly, in a childhood, weren't you a violinist too? Weren't you playing that when you grew up?
Right, right. I started playing the violin when I was 10 years old in California. In 1948, I played in a youth symphony in the Hollywood Bowl, and I played with adult symphonies when I was in grammar school. When I moved back to Pennsylvania here, I played with the Wilkinsburg Symphony, and then in the State Music and Forensic League competition, out of 365 violinists, I won the state violin championship here. And then I played with the Pittsburgh Symphony Junior, and then I played several concerts with them after that were like fundraising concerts that they did, and I was invited to be a part of the Pittsburgh Symphony. I could have continued there once I got my college under control and got everything. I had so many things going on. So I still do a lot of music. I play for country entertainers. I play on in the background on a whole lot of tapes. I have a number of Mennonite ministries that I work with, and I fiddle on the back. And I play at a big cowboy church in Florida every last Saturday of every month. We have a thing called the Honky Tonk Opry at this cowboy church, and we have a group of musicians, and we play for Christian country entertainers, and I do Nashville. And one of the highlights of my music thing is that next month I'll go to Fort Hood, Texas, and do a concert. I play violin for a man named Clifton Jansky, who has won every Christian country music award there is. And we do a concert for the troops going to Afghanistan. We did it last year for 1,500 troops. A year before that we did it, and we get invited back to entertain the troops there. That's a real thrill.
You know, what admires me about your testimony is that you're not afraid to share it. You know, when you plant the seed of gambling or alcohol or sexual whatever, we've been through it, right? Yeah. It just grows and grows and grows. I don't know whether you were like me or not, but I never feared God. I feared getting caught. Yeah. Did you ever have that spirit where you just done things, right? You didn't think anything about, didn't bother you about getting caught or doing that?
Oh, of course it bothers you about getting caught. When you're speeding, you don't want to get a ticket.
I know,
but you do it.
I know, but you had no fear. I mean, you didn't fear about prison or anything like that, right? You were just so much into the world.
You don't even think about it.
That's what I mean, right?
People don't think about that very much.
Well, isn't the way with marijuana and drugs and everything else? They're just living in another world, right?
You try to, if you have a lick of sense, you try to do those things in the shade, under the radar. You don't want to get caught, but you do. Whether they bust you and you go to jail or not, that stuff still captures you. There's still a price that you pay for all of that.
Now, getting back to New York there, I mean, you had to get into the wrong, was there somebody helping you with doing that robbery, or did you do it yourself?
I had a partner. I had a partner of mine that he and I had worked together all over the country, and several other guys I'd worked with, and I'm still in touch with all of these guys that are alive today. But we went to New York at Rikers Island, and someone who has been to a dozen grammar schools and high schools and traveled a lot, every day is an adventure. Every new setting is a new challenge. And prison was that. I went to the Tombs in New York City. That's the downtown jail, and fascinating adventure. And that's how I looked at life. What are we going to do? It's good. And so I'm in the building down there that's, I think there's about 12 floors to this jail building. They put me on the 8th floor, which was Celebrity Row. These were the guys that were on the front page of the newspapers. And a guy in the cell next to me was Crazy Joe Donahue. And Crazy Joe had been indicted on 17 contract killings for the mob. And so when you played checkers with Crazy Joe, you let him win a whole lot, right? And I had only been in there a short time, and they locked a man in the cell next to me. And I said, "Hey, how you doing, buddy?" And he didn't have any
but how did you get in there? I missed something here.
I got arrested for the museum robbery.
Before?
Yeah, somebody had said, "Hey, these guys are in town." So when the FBI, and I had run-ins in the Bahamas with Scotland Yard, I'd had run-ins with Interpol, I'd had run-ins with the police everywhere. They knew who we were, you know, because we'd been in this business a while. And so our names come out, they said, "Those are the guys right there." And so we got arrested in Miami, brought back to New York. So I'm in the Tombs, And they put the guy in the cell next to me, and he said, "Hey, pal, are you okay?" And he didn't have any conversation. So I asked the officer, "What's his story?" He said, "He killed Malcolm X this morning." So he and two other guys that morning had gone in where Malcolm X was preaching at a place, and they shot and killed him. And so that's an exciting agenda right there. I've got Crazy Joe Donahue over here. I've got this guy over here and all these other guys. And everybody on the 8th floor of the tombs was there under a capital crime. They were all facing the electric chair. And they stuck me there because they had this one section of guys that had extra officers watching us and all. So I spent about 8 months in the jail, and then we pled guilty to burglary tools or something, made a deal with the district attorney to give them back some of the stones in the robbery, went to Rikers Island. And that was an experience there. They had almost 6,000 men out there. 90% of them were heroin junkies, addicts. Well, that's a different world. And I'm on a prison block with 400 guys, and there's only 12 white boys on that block. That's quite an experience, coming from the beaches and the bikinis of South Florida to be up there. And all of these guys were pimps, and they were junkies. But the thing is, I was the only white guy working in the kitchen, but they had the Spanish guys in there, Puerto Ricans, mainly Puerto Rican guys, and I played ball on a Puerto Rican ball team. And I loved it, and it wasn't any problem for me. And that's why today, for the last 25 years, I've worked in Puerto Rico in the prisons down there. Last week I was down there. I took 250 people into 16 different prisons on Ponce, on the south side of Puerto Rico, because I love the Puerto Rican people. And it all started with playing ball with the Puerto Rican team in prison. And so I go down, and that's one of the top agendas in my life, is doing the prisons there. And I've been in all through the Caribbean, but all over South America in the Spanish prisons.
All right, now I'm going to go back to you got out of jail from that other stuff, right? How did you get into the prison for 21 years? How did that become? We're going to do that next week, but tell me about it.
Yeah, I did 2 years in New York prisons. I got out, and like 70% of the men who come out of prisons everywhere, I became a recidivist. That's a fancy word for someone who returns to crime, returns to the same old thing, and goes back to prison. So in Florida, I was so convinced, Don, that guys like me who had a prison record, had a bad attitude, had a drug habit and all, I was so convinced that guys don't change that I didn't even try. That's why when people come out of prison, they don't even try, most of them, because you sit around and you listen to what I call losers' lies. And one of the games that losers play is they won't take the weight for their own choices. They try to blame somebody else, find somebody else. It's his fault or my dad's fault or my neighborhood's fault. So when I came out of prison in New York and went back to Miami, before I went anywhere, I went and got a pistol. And I was Jesse James, coast to coast. And a year later, I was back in, and I had serious charges. That wasn't like New York where I got just a couple years in prison. Now I ended up with 2 life sentences and 20 years for the state of Florida. I had federal time on top of that, and they hauled me off to the maximum security prison in Florida, and it was a 21-year run altogether in prison.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm going to go to, because we're going to go back next week and continue on there, okay?
Sure.
But I had a scripture, I'm sitting there, the Lord gave me, Psalm 142, verse 7. Bring my soul out of prison, that I may praise the name, thy righteous shall compass me about, for thou shalt deal bountifully with me. Prison. You see, I started this message out today, and this man is so powerful. Him and I went down, I come from a family too that there's not much money, but I guess I wanted to live that high society of country club stuff, and then it got into and you had a lot of talent in the background like I did, and you used it, but you were a con artist, a professional con artist, and so was I, and you were out to get what you wanted, didn't matter what it cost, right? Mm-hmm. And next week we're coming back to find out what happened when he was in prison and how he became a born-again Christian according to John 3:3 and 1 Peter 1:23. You see, these are true stories. He's not afraid to. He's been across the country. When you hear what he has done in the future with the Bill Glass Crusade and many other crusades and so forth, and how God has changed his life all the way around, am I right? Right. All the way around, you see. And here's what we want to do today to let you know. you know, jail and prison and all that life might seem exciting, but there is no more excitement than what we're doing today. Am I right?
Yeah.
And that's what I say. We started out here today about prison. You're all in prison until you're born again. I was in prison talking to a man one time. I had a thing over his head and so forth, you know, and come up and give me a hug 2 lifetimes, you know. And he got saved when I was preaching. And you know, he told me, he said, Don, he says, I'm so glad. He says, I'm free. I said, I feel sorry for the people outside of prison. They're still in prison. Figure that out. What does he mean? People won't even catch that. That means you are not saved. You're in prison until you're born again, until you're set free. You're in prison to the world. And that's why Crossing Passes take time to bring out men like him. He goes across the country sharing his testimony. We're not glorifying sex in the past, people. We're not glorifying sin. We're telling you the truth, because Jesus said in John 8:32, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. He said in John 8:36, if the Son sets you free, shall set you free, you are free. He's indeed now free. And we want to get to people out there to realize that Jesus Christ is real. I hope you don't have to go to prison to get free. I hope you don't have to go through the filth and the things that I did, the dirty things I did in my past, and I'm forgiven. But there's so many people in the church today that they didn't do this, they didn't do that, they think they're good, and they've never been set free. Now, are you one of bring next week? Tell somebody about our show. Next week we're going to continue on. You're going to hear stories about prison and what happens in prison, and when he come out, how he got saved, he got born again, got his name written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And that's what you need to do today. And it's not something, no set sinner's prayer. There's no such sinner's prayer. Is your heart right? Romans 10:9 and 10 says, if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus Christ and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. Because with the heart man believeth, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. Romans 12:9 and 10. Do you know Jesus Christ? I'm asking you today. All you got to do is, maybe you won't feel anything I did. I had to be the coldest cucumber that ever got saved. I didn't even know I was saved. God said, you're not saved on feelings. Abraham, Genesis 15:6, Abraham believed in the Lord, and the Lord counted that unto him for righteousness. I actually believe, and you actually believe, that God's forgiven me for everything I ever done. Past, get this, present, and future. Isn't that a good deal for an ex-gambler? A man like you and me? We have a telephone number. People standing by. 724-981-7777. 1-855-981-9777. If you want to help us out, be a partner. We don't have any live telethons. We're on the air now for 18 years. We need your help out there to stay on and preach and teach the gospel and bring it to the town. Maybe you're going to be the next person on Crossing Paths TV. God bless you. We love you. Call that telephone number right now, 724-981-7777, 1-855-981-9777. God's perfect number. We love you.
Crossing paths together, working hand in hand. Good to see your brother take a stronger stand. Crossing paths together, on that day we're sure to stand.